Good morning, everybody. Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany is our very special guest today, Thursday, March 9th. March 9th, 2023. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and we are streaming this month's Breakfast with Tiffany show live on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. So however you may be watching, welcome and thank you for joining us. As always, if you have a question for the Congressman, let us know in the comments during today's live show. Tom, good morning, sir. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Can I make a couple announcements at the top of the show?
You could do whatever you want, man.
First of all, yesterday was the 23rd birthday of my middle daughter, Lexi. So happy birthday to her.
Happy birthday.
And yeah, I made sure sent her birthday
Attaboy.
recognition yesterday morning. And
Yeah.
so anyhow, so her birthday yesterday, big day. And in fact, the text I sent to her yesterday morning, I said, hey, how about if I work on trying to make March 8th a national holiday? And she gave me a thumbs up. I'm not sure it's going to work. Also, did you, I think his name is Gary Rossinger, passed away, 71 years old. I think he was a guitarist for Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Oh,
Last of the original members of Lynyrd Skynyrd, one of the greatest rock bands in the history of rock and roll.
wow. Hey, I want to circle back to, you said March 8th to make it a national day. What would you call it?
Lexi Day.
Lexi Day. Well, fun story. On Tuesday, we're doing our Positive Tuesday Benefits show with Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I noticed that morning when I was looking up like national days, it was National Ben Day. So I literally had to, what are the odds of that? I don't know.
You know that this is why I talk to you about these things. We need to do a National Lexi Day.
There you go. Oh, it looks like
Thank you so much.
my dad is watching, former Washington County Sheriff Terry Dryden. Welcome, Tom. You must be in district today. I don't know that is a new backdrop for you. Where are you?
I am in Washington, D.C. We're in session this week, and did the staff do a great job of putting together a backdrop?
Holy
I think
cow.
It's terrific.
That looks fantastic.
Yeah, looking good.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, your staff. Where would
Now,
you be without your staff?
Actually, I'm not going to apologize, but I'm going to acknowledge that you can see the one town that is listed in the background. And there's obviously hundreds of towns that are across the 7th Congressional District. I had to put my hometown up. So,
Minocqua. Is that what you're for? Okay. All right.
so I had to do that. There's so many great communities that could be put there, but I put my hometown, and I hope people will understand.
If I send you one that says Spooner, and what have you always called DrydenWire Spooner, the world headquarters of DrydenWire? You should
World
put that
headquarters.
up. Yeah, we'll send that to you.
Well, get your plaque made up. World headquarters, DrydenWire, Spooner, Wisconsin. We'll get it up.
In your district. All right. The show
At
is
least for
already
1 month.
going way off the rails. So I only had one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and I don't know if you want to talk about it now. I told you right before the show. I had it up on my phone. It was just regarding a press release that you had sent out and that we had published. I think it was a couple days ago. Is now a good time for us to get into that?
Fire away.
Okay, hold on. Now I got to find it. I got it. There it is. So here's the headline from a press release. Tiffany introduces legislation to protect American sovereignty against World Health Organization. In the intro here, it says, today, Congressman Tom Tiffany led 14 of his House colleagues in introducing the Know Who, as in WHO, World Health Organization, Know Who Pandemic Preparedness Treaty Without Senate Approval Act. That's a mouthful. Legislation would require any convention or agreement resulting from the work of the World Health Organization's intergovernmental negotiating body to be deemed a treaty requiring the advice and consent of a supermajority of the Senate. Yeah, I have no idea what that means. So what's going on?
Yeah, so what's going on there? The World Health Organization, which is, this multi-government entity affiliated, I believe it's affiliated with the United Nations. And so the Biden administration has an envoy to the World Health Organization who has said, in fact, let's see, I've got the exact words here. Yeah, Biden envoy says we are committed to a pandemic accord as an enduring binding instrument for generations to come. So in other words, binding the United States of America to an agreement with the World Health Organization. And what the bill I introduced, along with Senator Johnson from Wisconsin, it says that in order to ratify any agreement with the World Health Organization, you have to treat it as a treaty. And under I believe it's the Constitution of our country, any treaties have to have a 2/3 vote of the United States Senate. And I think that's appropriate in this case. If you're going to enter into such a broad agreement that affects the health of all citizens of the United States, then it should be done as a treaty if you're going to enter into this international agreement. So, real simply, it would require a 2/3 vote by the United States Senate to do this. Now, part of the reason that we're doing this is the World Health Organization has not conducted itself in a manner that has been helpful to America over the last few years. Let's go back to December of 2019 when the Taiwanese government, they went and warned the World Health Organization there may be an organism in Wuhan, China that is could lead to a pandemic, that they have real problems, perhaps even in this laboratory, but certainly in Wuhan, China. They were warned, the World Health Organization, that you may have a problem here. They ignored it. In fact, they did even more than ignore it. They went and just swept it under the rug and did not call out the Communist Chinese Party, the Chinese Communist Party. They did not call them out to be more open and transparent. And we saw what happened over the course of a couple of years. Hundreds of thousands of people died. It disrupted the world, and the world still has not recovered from it. And the World Health Organization did not do their job in holding the Communist Chinese government accountable. We should not be letting the World Health Organization dictate the healthcare, the health proposals that are being put forward if for no other reason it breaches the sovereignty of our country.
So if what you are proposing right now, if that was in place in 2019, what would that have looked like then?
So, the World Health Organization would have done their thing. What the WHO and the Biden administration are proposing here, this is forward looking, saying we're going to have this agreement where the World Health Organization basically has a say in how we conduct our healthcare policies here in the United States. There is no international organization like the World Health Organization or any others that should be having any say legally, in a legally binding way, for the people of the United States of America. That should only be done by the Congress of the United States of America or the president. And the president's trying to offload this to this multilateral organization, the World Health Organization. We should never do that for anything, and especially for our healthcare.
Well, I'm looking further down in your press release, in the 14 members of Congress co-sponsored Tiffany's Know Who Pandemic Preparedness Treaty without Senate approval act includes, and I'm not going to go through the names, but I'm seeing mostly, I think all of these are Republicans from just briefly looking at it. And it does say, you're right, Senator Ron Johnson has introduced identical legislation in the Senate. He's joined by 43 senators, including, and then all their names, but I see a lot of R's next to their name. So this sounds like it is a Republican thing. First, is it? And second, why aren't your Democratic your Democrat colleagues or people that are listening to the Democrat, why aren't they getting behind this? What is the hang up?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So you're accurate in your analysis there that it is Republicans. Senator Johnson got almost every Republican senator to sign on to it. I have 14 of my colleagues. We wanted to get it out the door because we thought it was so important to do that. Otherwise, I think we could have gotten a lot more people also. I'm hoping that my Democrat colleagues will come along here as we go along. Think about the information that's been revealed now over the last couple months about the response to COVID. We found out that, masks really don't work, that they don't have much effect. We're finding out that natural immunity is more powerful than vaccinated immunity. We're finding out that lockdowns did not work. I mean, we're seeing information coming out steadily in regards to that. We're finding out that the social media companies stifled those doctors who said, maybe there's other ways in which we could treat this rather than simply following along with what Dr. Fauci was saying. And we're finding out that that was stifled also. So we're finding out all these things. And now we've had numerous people, including everybody from the FBI director to yesterday, the former head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it's almost certain that this virus came from a lab and that it was man-made, and that lab being in Wuhan, China. So it's becoming more and more evident, I believe, for most people that give this an honest look, that look at it through, they take off their partisan lenses in their glasses and they look at it straight up. I think it's becoming more and more evident that this was released from the lab in Wuhan, China, and we need to get to the bottom of it. And we should not trust the World Health Organization because they went and covered for the communist Chinese government rather than being honest brokers and saying to China, you got to release all the information. Way back early on in December 2019, January 2020, we may have been able to head this off if the World Health Organization had done their job. Since they've proven we can't trust them, any agreement with them should be subject to a treaty ratification by the United States Senate.
I just want to say good morning to Representative Gabe Magnifici and to Renee. And I don't know if you can see the comments, if you have that up on your end, Congressman, but Steve had a question there. Can you see those comments? I didn't put it on the screen yet.
Yeah, I see they've been popping up, but I did not see the question from Steve. What was it?
Yeah, here it is. How can we get away from the predatory practice of overcharging facilities to cover RN, LPNs to places that are short-staffed?
Well, one of the ways in which we could do that, and we're attempting to do that in the House of Representatives, is saying to healthcare facilities that you should bring back all the people that you laid off that chose not to be vaccinated. In particular, I think about a major healthcare facility that is operation that's headquartered in Minnesota that has significant operations in western Wisconsin. I believe they let go about 500 people a couple years ago because they chose not to be vaccinated. Now remember, having natural immunity is as strong, if not stronger, than having vaccinated immunity. These people made a conscious decision about their health that's being vindicated, that they probably made the right decision about their health. Yet that healthcare system let them go. They should bring those people back to begin with. Bring them back in with open arms and say, okay, we've got new information. We probably should not have done what we did. That's one of the places that we could start right there is let's reinstate those people that were fired by some of the hospitals as a result of this mandate from the federal government. And by the way, it was a mandate from the federal government. And this is where Dr. Anthony Fauci needs to be held accountable because he's the one that jammed these mandates on the American people. He was the voice of doing this. He needs to be held accountable with others like Francis Collins, Deborah Birx, and we could name others that really pushed this, that this was the only way to be able to treat people. This was the only protocols when they ignored other doctors who had other ways of being able to treat the COVID virus. Those people really need to be held accountable. Sure. But to Steve's question, let's start by reinstating those people that made a conscious decision.
Well, you had stated, I think, a couple times now that we know now that natural immunity is, kind of at the top there. So it's easy, I think, to kind of look back and go, well, now that we know what we know now, well, then we should have, et cetera. That's one thing. But regarding the lab, because I remember hearing about that, it was released from a China lab, but I thought that was like a conspiracy thing. Are you suggesting or are you saying that we did know this?
This is
what was that?
Oh, yeah. So you're hearing the buzzer in the background. That's calling us into session for the day.
What?
So activities on the House floor start, and we've got this buzzer system
that's awesome.
Announces that.
Oh yeah. So going to finish that, which I've never heard before. That is so awesome. But is this something that maybe they knew about it, or is it oversight? Like we just didn't look into it, or is it a we may think so, but we don't really want to look into it. So it's almost I don't want to use the word cover up. There's another word for that, but it's we. That's the only thing I could think of right now. But I'm sure that's not what it is. So is it an aptitude or is it a choice?
Yeah, so we're doing the oversight in regards to this, and this is why it's so important to do oversight on an issue like this, is to get all the information out there, regardless of what the issue is. And this is one of the most important issues that we should be doing oversight on, because this can never happen again. There were approaches that were taken by Dr. Fauci and others in the government-run healthcare establishment that were disastrous for Americans, that were the wrong decisions to make. Now, some people will say, well, it's easy to say that because you're looking in the rearview mirror. Hindsight is 2020. Dr. Fauci stifled this information way back in early 2020. He did not allow this information to come out. In fact, he specifically said that, oh, this lab leak theory is probably not correct. We believe that this was an animal mutation that happened. That's how this happened. And if you remember people are all focused on bats and coronavirus and stuff like that. A lot of that was driven by what Dr. Fauci was saying. I would say one other thing. At the end of 2020, Dr. Francis Collins, the head of the National Institute of Health, sent an email to Dr. Fauci saying, you got to stop this stuff where some doctors are talking about using alternative medicinal cures for this, using alternative medicines to be able to provide care for these people. You got to stop it. And that was the precise time Dr. Fauci said, hey, ivermectin is a horse medicine. Why would you give people horse medicine? Well, it turns out ivermectin is one of the safest drugs for mankind that you will find. It's been used for a long time. And so Dr. Fauci was stifling this information and saying, it's my way or the highway. You do it my way or there's no other way that works. That's not how medicine works. That's not how science works. We should be looking at information, and that was stifled through this whole thing. So there's some people that need to answer, in particular, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Dr. Deborah Birx, Dr. Francis Collins, and others. They need to answer for why they stifled this information back in 2020, because this is not just looking back 2020 with 2020 vision. Some people were highlighting this and their voices were stifled, including by the social media companies.
All right. Well, to kind of put a bow on this, well, I didn't know we're going to talk, which is fine. I love just, and again, that's what these shows are. Is we don't know what we're going to talk about, and some could go 5 minutes, some could go 20 minutes. And maybe this is too much speculation. Maybe this is something you can't answer. But if this was created in a lab, do you have any knowledge as to why? What was the virtue?
Well, I mean, so it is speculation as far as why that was done. But take a look at the Communist Chinese government. I have not had a chance to study Dr. Redfield's comments from yesterday when he appeared before, I believe it was a House committee. And he talked about how certain things changed in that lab in terms of their protocols and things like that. I urge our listeners to go back and look at the three things. I think there were three things that he highlighted that changed at that lab. And so, including, I think one of those is that it went from civilian control to military control. So why did the Communist Chinese government say we're going to have military control over this lab at this point? That's a key question. And if I was to speculate, I mean, the Communist Chinese government they're making it very clear. We are seeking global hegemony. Remember that word from last month. I mean, they're seeking to control the world. They've made it very clear in many ways. This is one of the ways in which they could do it. And they sought to diminish America. And if this was their goal, they accomplished it, because our country has still not recovered from the what happened with COVID.
Yeah. All right. I have wrote down why I was listening. But I also wrote down some notes because I'm always writing down. Like, you're the only guest that I ever have on that I actually have to do homework when I'm finished. It drives me crazy. So I'll look into a whole bunch of it. I want to talk to you about the Supreme Court because in Wisconsin, that race coming up, just for fun. I want to see what your thoughts are on Aaron Rodgers. You also had something you sent out about an art competition. Want to talk about that. And then now that bell went off, or that ringer went off, I want to find out what you are up to today. But first, we'll be back in 15 seconds after a word from Spooner Health.
In our patient satisfaction surveys and in conversations with patients, they appreciate the fact that staff got to know them. Staff really took their preferences into account, and they just feel grateful that they are being cared for as a person.
To learn more about our services, visit spoonerhealth.com.
Okay, so in I think like 25, 26 days from now is the Wisconsin Supreme Court election. So you come on the second Thursday of every month, so it'll be over by then. How's this going to play out?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, at this point, if Vegas was putting odds on it, they would be saying that Janet Protasevich would probably win the race. I mean, if that's what's going on right now. And but I think Dan Kelly is closing at this point. And I mean, let's get out of the whole horse race thing, because that's not what this is about. This is about who's going to be a justice that is going to go in with a neutral view of the law and simply call balls and strikes, much like an umpire, much like a referee that does not have an interest in who wins the game, just making sure that the rules are followed. And it's pretty clear at this point. Janet Protasevich has said, there's sometimes that my personal inclinations are going to enter into this. That is not how our courts are supposed to work. And I'm hoping that she backs off from that, because that would scare the heck out of me, whether I was a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Liberal, Democrat, Progressive, a Republican, a Conservative. I don't care what you are in terms of your political philosophy. Our country, one of the pillars is the rule of law, and everyone gets equal treatment under the law. She's saying that at times, I may need to touch those scales of justice a little bit. That is not a judge's
It is scary. It
job.
is. And you're 100% right. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or it shouldn't matter. No, I get it's going to be a big single issue vote thing. Abortion is going to, that's going to be a big driving force. I understand that. But that person I think you should be concerned about then is in a year from now or in 6 months from now, if there's something else that comes up that you don't agree with, that person is now putting their personal views on that. I'm just saying it's really interesting. I have no idea. I agree with you that as of right now, it seems as though if odds were placed, it does seem like Judge Janet would be the likely, but we'll see how that goes. It's going to be very interesting.
She's got the most money, and
a lot,
and certainly did a good job in the run-up as far as campaigning and stuff like
certainly.
that. But people have to decide: do you want the rule? I got to tell you, Ben, the thing when I come back home, which is every weekend, when I come back home, one of the main things people say is, "What has happened to the rule of law in the United States of America? We've got a lawless border. We've got an FBI that is trying to tip the scales by working with social media companies against certain people. I mean, you have all these, go to Minneapolis, you want to see a lawless city. And this lawlessness continues to go on. And people in America really need to decide, are we going to have rule of law in our country? Because I know for a lot of people, they're deeply concerned about that at this point. And we don't want our Supreme Court to head that route. Because our Supreme Court in Wisconsin has a long, proud tradition of not being a political body, of largely calling balls and strikes. They've had a pretty good reputation over the decades. God, we'd hate to lose that, because think about what happens then. You have small businesses that say, we're out of here. If we can't count on the rule of law, we're not going to be here. I mean, people make decisions in their real lives based on things like, is the rule of law going to be upheld in a state?
We have a question here from Renee. What happened to the files that were sitting at the president? Yes, all those, what were those? The records in the files. Yeah, I haven't seen that in the news lately. Do you know of an update on that?
Yeah. No, I have no update on it. It's been
Okay.
swept out of the mainstream media complex. They've pretty much shut down that story.
Yeah. No wonder why. I check
We
every
heard
morning.
about it
certain
for a
news.
week.
Yeah. It
It's gone.
Well, there you go, Renee. Right from the congressman. There you go. Art competition. I saw that. It was a press release a couple of weeks ago, or just an announcement. You have an art competition. You do that yearly. What is that, and what can people do?
Congressional art competition. It is. Let's see. Deadline date is Friday, April 7th, 5 p.m. So for any kids that are out there that are in school, you can enter the Congressional art competition. If you win, just like a young woman won from Wausau West High School last year. What was her name? I think her name was Ellie. Was it Ellie Tao? And you get your piece of art displayed in the tunnel between our office buildings and the United States Capitol.
What?
So you are in the United States Capitol complex if you win the art competition. We urge, whether you're parents, grandparents, art teachers, whomever, encourage those artists out there to submit those by April 7th. We would love to see their work. And God, what's the theme this year?
It is. I didn't know
regards
it. I know what the theme is because my daughter wants to do it because now that she's in high school, she can. So Riley is going to, or she's going, but she's struggling with the theme, and that is a day in the life in Wisconsin. I believe that is the
There you
theme.
go.
And I only know that not because of DrydenWire, just because I'm a parent. Because I printed it off for her when you had sent that out. She's like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "Whatever it is, I guess to you." So
Yeah,
that's what the
she's
theme
a
is
cre-
this year.
Yeah, she's a creative girl.
Yeah.
Have at it.
All right. Your buzzer went off about 15 minutes ago saying, so I don't know if you're like getting in trouble or if somebody's going to knock on your door and say, hey, get in, class started, let's go. Do you have anything on the agenda or the proverbial docket today?
So actually, where I'm headed in just a couple minutes here is we're going to have a markup, in other words, vote on bills in committee today in the Natural Resources Committee. We have a number of natural resources bill, including putting some reforms in place in regards to the regulatory processes. One of the big complaints that I hear, Ben, is it takes so long to get permits issued. I mean, we've seen permits that have taken as long as 10 to 20 years to be decided on. And so we want to put some certainty in that. One of the things is that, okay, when you submit a permit application, it has to be dealt with in a certain amount of time.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but a permit for what?
A variety. So anything that has a federal nexus. So let's say, for example, if we have a harvest on the national forest, on the Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest, it has to go through something called the NEPA process, which is NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, that was passed 50 years ago. Landmark piece of legislation, so that we got to make sure that we're protecting the environment. It's a good thing. Well, it's been weaponized now by some of the extreme environmentalists where they'll drag these out for years. I mean, we've seen potential harvests on the Chequamegon-Nicolet that should be done. They'll get tied up in litigation for like 5 to 10 years and they will not get their permits as a result of it. We're saying, hey, let's not reduce environmental standards, but let's get more certainty into the process and give people a yes or no and not make it last for 5, 10, 15 years.
Do you think this is going to be a successful? It's going to work in the way that you want it to work? So if you were on again, or at the end of the day today, was it good? Do you think it's going to, what you want to get accomplished, is it going to get accomplished today? Or is it, I don't know yet.
Yeah, will these bills pass? There's
Yeah.
a couple different bills along this line. I believe that they will pass out of natural resources today. And then the big question, will we get it through the full House and get 218 votes? I sure hope we do that. And I don't know that we'll get any Democrat votes in the committee, but I hope we do. I don't know that, but I certainly hope if this gets to the full House floor that we're going to have some Democrats who are going to say, yeah, we need a little more common sense permitting rather than what's going on right now.
What else do you have? You said you have a couple of bills. Oh, sounds like I think that's the second bell. You're going to have to go.
There we go. We got 10 o'clock. We got 10
What's
o'clock.
the other one real quick? You said there's a couple of things. That's one of them. Do you have another one?
So they all revolve around this same issue.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, they're around that same issue in regards to permitting and being able to utilize our natural resources, giving more certainty for like oil and gas lease permits, making sure that companies get an answer when they file for these permits. And but it's all about energy independence, making sure America is energy independent, keeping prices down and affordable. Because when you have these delays, it leads to higher prices.
Yeah. Lastly, Aaron Rodgers, where's the Jets? Oh, I should say, well, the field. Is he going to be back with the Packers, with another team, or retire? Those are your three options.
My prediction: he will not be back with the Packers. I don't know whether he will play again. I suspect that he'll want to continue to play, but I predict he will not be back with the Packers next year.
I agree. And there's Shellick Police Chief Dave Wilson. Yeah, who, by the way, I believe is the next. We had a passing of the Washburn County Board Chair, he spent decades in service to this county. Mr. Tom Mackey. And David, I believe, I think we'll have a story about that today, actually. A little preview there.
Yeah, very sorry to hear that. I know I sent a note of condolences to Tom's family. And, great American, average person who does extraordinary things for their local community, stays heavily involved, and those kind of people are priceless in America.
100%. All right, man. Thanks so much for coming on. We'll see you next month, huh?
Hey, talk to you in April.
You got it. Special thank you to our guest today, Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany, for taking the time and apparently missing school already because we ran a little bit late. I'll see you right back here next Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back for our latest episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy, when we'll be joined by Spooner Health CEO Mike Schaefer. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed